All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining us today. My name is Chris Isbell with Martin and Associates. On the line with me, we have Tom Ferris, our Acumatica practice manager. And today we're going to be discussing what's new in Acumatica 2022 R2. So it's the year and then the release. So Acumatica has 2 releases per year generally, usually around April and October. And this release is covering the 2022 R2 version that came out last fall, with a sneak peek of 2023 R1, which should be coming out in about a month and a half. And so we're going to kind of tag team a little bit of those, and then we'll have more detailed one about 2023 R1 later this year. And before I let Tom go, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this presentation, and the link will be sent to you in the next couple of days after we finish. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button or the chat button. Either one's fine. I'll be monitoring both to ask any questions. We're happy to answer those. And then probably answer the questions at the end of the demo. So ask away, and if it's something I can type in, I will. If it's something we'll have Tom go in more detail, or we're happy to do that at the end. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in. Again, this is Tom Ferris with Martin and Associates. He's going to run the demo today, so take it away, Tom.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. Everyone, looking forward to presenting some highlights. And as we go through this, Chris, of course, is a very experienced consultant, manager, designer of Acumatica himself. And I always invite him to kind of chime in and comment on particular features that we'll highlight for Acumatica 2022 R2 and the preview of the new one coming out in April. And I'll also make some comments as we go along about why upgrade, besides some of the highlights that we're going to review today, because we primarily have current customers who are on Acumatica. We'll talk a little bit about why it's valuable to stay updated, and some of the processes that Martin Associates can help you, and some of the assets that Acumatica makes available to keep us all current, in addition to the shiny new tools that we'll take a look at that come out with each release. Okay, so stepping into Acumatica 2022 R2, the demonstration database. I'll highlight a few features, but we'll also take a look at the general list. So let's kind of set the stage here for what Acumatica makes available to all of us under help.acumatica.com. If we look for release notes, release notes, and these they call the overview. Nah, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's do it this way here. All right, so let's open that up in a new tab. With whatever the current version is of Acumatica, if you go to help.acumatica.com and type in release notes, you will see this list. And so if there are questions that you place in the Q&A or chat, Chris can monitor that. We'll be monitoring those, and we can kind of react to that and say, actually, I have an interest in a particular feature that you guys did not cover. This is a fairly comprehensive list of the features that Acumatica modified or added to Acumatica with the 2022 R2 release. For an example, in finance, we're going to be looking at the addition of the approval feature for GL transactions. And so here's Acumatica's listing of it, where in the help menu, they basically say, a little bit about why they added this feature, how it works. They'll actually provide some screen images. I'm basically giving you guys, attendees today, an option to go beyond what we decided to show during this webinar. Okay, but here's the kind of the format and the location of some of these feature additions that you can kind of check out yourself. All right, so let's take a look at it. I'm missing one tab here. So our good old journal entry form, and as users, we might have reason to put an external payroll systems input directly in as a GL journal entry. So let's go journal entry up here. All right, so here's someone allocating salary expenses by headcount. Very typical. External to Acumatica is a payroll system, and I've got a journal entry I want to put in, whether I put it in manually or import it or load records from file and bring this data in. I might be a data entry clerk on the finance team, but a supervisor of mine needs to review it. And the assignment and approval maps feature has been around for quite some time. With 2022 R2, Acumatica extended the approval capacity to the journal entry form. And that's what this approvals tab is about. Right now, we're not seeing it active. I'll activate it in here. We'll get a feel for how this works. The first part would be in our general ledger preferences, turning on, and general ledger preferences is where we first set up how your chart of accounts is structured and some basic settings. New tab added for approvals. And if we say yes and make that active, it means that this approval map, journal transactions GL approval, will now be applicable as we start to interact with the journal transaction form. What's to an approval map? If you're not familiar with those, let's go take a look. Here's that approval map. And approval maps are sitting in they're a configuration setting. And this can allow for one step or even a multi-step control over the journal entry that's capable of being entered, maybe even brought to a balance state, but not capable of being released and posting until it's approved. So here's our multi-step approval map. It has different routings for transactions that are larger. For example, as soon as the amount is over $1 million, then a rule action says that even if like maybe a lower level approval was achieved, this transaction might have to receive a second level of approval from one employee, Regina Wiley, for example. You can also route approvals to an entire work group. So if there are 4 different persons who might be at a certain level that could approve it, you don't have to list a singular employee. You could say someone from the C-suite or operations or finance management needs to approve a document that is posted to the GL this magnitude. A couple other things about approval maps. You can have decision wait time where the actual approval in queue waiting to be approved can basically go from a black text font to a red text font, denoting that it's kind of overdue. Okay, so that's the approval map working behind the scenes that's been engaged. Now let's see it in action. I can take a formerly posted GL that didn't go through any sort of approval, but now that the approval map turned on, we'll copy a given document. This will speed up the data entry here. And I'll use our copy and paste clipboard feature. So this is really testing approval. Save on that. Take the document off hold. And it looks like I must be missing a condition that I didn't trigger the approval map. Let's make sure I hit save here. That's engaged. It's possible that there's something about the conditions in here that I haven't triggered an approval here. Control accounts. Okay, so it's not necessarily pertaining to control account. Let's see. What if we do this? Maybe I need to trigger it with like a little bit more activity. Let's put this back on hold so I can edit it further. See if I can trigger the approval map. If not, we'll move on to the next topic. But if I put another $1 million worth of activity into here, take that off hold. Aha, there we go. All right, so I just hadn't reached the actual threshold for approval. So again, on hold is kind of an editing state. Next state is to bring the document to a balanced state, which is make sure that debits and credits equal one another based on your detailed entry. But rather than going to a balanced state, the document immediately goes to a pending approval state. And our approval map says Regina Wiley needs to approve it. A quick heads up for Acumatica 2023 R1, something that's new that's coming is rather than following just this approval map, having someone who is a temporary delegate or a one-off approver, if you have the right permissions, is a new feature that's coming. So the quick pitch for Acumatica never rests. They are constantly improving the software. So even what I'm showing you now in 2022 R2, we actually already have some visibility to some improvements they've made upon this. All right, so if I'm part of the work group or listed as a delegate, I might be able to approve the document on behalf of Regina. Let's see if my sales demo data gave me those permissions. Aha, I do not have approval. So a great way, if you're not familiar with approvals, to take a look at this would be to visit the user experience for Regina. Let's see if I can see an example of the approval routing in here for all documents. Not my approvals. And again, I'm not part of that work group, so I'm not seeing that journal entry. Yeah, I don't have the permissions to actually see that particular journal entry. So I'd have to log in as Regina. But basically, Regina would be coming to the equivalent of this approvals page and electing to approve multiple documents at a time, or engaging the hyperlink to actually go visit that document, in this case, this particular journal entry, and either approve or reject it, and then that will be recorded. And Acumatica also comes with notifications. So in addition to Regina visiting an approvals list, she can also be sent an email by Acumatica that says there's a journal transaction awaiting your approval. That's another option. And Acumatica has predefined a number of notification templates with kind of like the subject and the body and the hyperlink typically back to the document in case Regina is away from the office and is monitoring it in inbox. She could be brought right into Acumatica through that hyperlink and come in and approve the document. Something I'm not able to do. That wasn't part of the permissions that were given to my admin user role in this database. All right, so that's an extension of the approval map feature being added and extended. It was already present on sales orders. If you're in manufacturing, it's been present in engineering change requests and change orders, for example. It's been part of AP bills and AR invoices, and now it's part of the finance journal transaction entry. All right, Chris, any commentary, or should I move on to the next subject?
No, I was just going to cover what you said recently. Is some of you might be thinking about using it for like invoices or purchase orders, but it's they are expanding that, which is great. So that's all.
Nice. Yep. And again, if you're not familiar with approval maps and you are a current Acumatica user, all you have to do is come up in the universal search, type in approval map, and whether or not you're using them currently, Acumatica will come pre-built with a number of assignment and approval maps for a variety of what it calls entity types. We all know these as forms: journal transactions, sales orders, projects, support cases, etc. And there are a couple pages worth. To Chris's point, the most common ones are I don't really want an AP bill to post to AP liabilities until it's approved by so-and-so, or perhaps checks really shouldn't be cut until someone goes through the check and payments form records that have been drafted and approves those. All right, cool. A little approval map extension. Next up would be some of the rather significant e-commerce integration enhancements. And this is a fairly comprehensive library. So within, I mentioned at the beginning, help.acumatica.com, and the ability to kind of see all the new things that have been added for a given release. Well, a given instance of Acumatica, whether you're in sales demo or in your production database or a test database, you have access to. If we type in release notes in the universal search and then visit the help topics, a lot of times, when you're using universal search, you're looking for a particular menu item that you may not know which workspace it resides in. But if you come to help topics, you'll find that same list. So rather than referencing, quote, the internet and going out to Acumatica's website for help.acumatica.com, we can get that same list right here in our own Acumatica instance. Now, if you're not running Acumatica 2022 R2, you won't see this list. You'll see whatever's part of your release, 2021 R2, etc. But this is another way to get to that list. For those who deal with selling B2B or B2C through an e-commerce connection, that could be for WooCommerce or Magento. These releases are going to be focused primarily on customers who are using either Shopify or BigCommerce. Those are the two e-commerce platforms that Acumatica has aligned with most closely. And so thus the release notes are going to pertain to the kind of out-of-the-box connectors that Acumatica has built in conjunction with each of Shopify and or BigCommerce. So just FYI. This is basically talking to an e-commerce platform regarding synchronizing inventory counts, inventory images, so that your end user's purchasing and shopping experience is aligned with the data that's in Acumatica. There's a lot here, so I'm basically going to invite folks who are interested in e-commerce to check out these resources through, say, help.acumatica.com. Chris might be able to comment on a few of these. I'm just going to kind of go through some highlights. And it's mostly about the ongoing investment that Acumatica makes in Shopify and BigCommerce connectors between the ERP and the e-commerce portal. Connections of a store. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes, some of the favorite ones, that the most applicable ones. Multiple guest customer accounts. That was one. So again, there's about 4 different things in this particular release. In previous versions of Acumatica ERP, orders that were placed in an external system by a guest customer, for example, customers that make purchases at a point of sale, or orders on a BigCommerce website without signing in. In other words, they haven't actually put in explicit credentials. They're visiting the shopping cart as a guest. When those orders are completed and come down into Acumatica fulfillment, now I got to go out to my warehouse and pick, pack, and ship that which has been ordered. they were created and all dumped into a single fictitious customer sign-in or customer non-sign-in account. And sometimes some customers would have hundreds of thousands of orders that all dumped into fictitious customer zero. Acumatica has made some enhancements to that, including like the auto numbering and what is the generic guest customer record, making reporting and management of those a bit easier in each of the BigCommerce and Shopify stores. And the settings themselves, yeah, let's go pull up BC 201. What this really pertains to is, here's the sync settings, the bidirectional sync settings. Some of these are monodirectional, but basically, if I'm selling items that are managed with a SKU or item master list as in Acumatica, I need to have orders that are upstream in BigCommerce, for example, create a customer record, and if the customer has multiple locations on them, and keep all that synchronized. The stock items that I sell need to be synchronized. If I manage all those stock items through a template or matrix setting, those have to be. When I modify my price list in Acumatica, the price list needs to be synchronized up to my e-commerce platform, so I'm not making that edit in two places. These are all the sync elements, and our help menu is basically telling us that they extended how the generic customer can be managed when there's a non-signed in user who's actually placing an order with us. All right, so that's one example. Chris, did you have any favorites within the e-commerce extensions? I had really that customer zero scenario.
No, that's a good one for now.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. They do keep
right.
putting a lot of effort into making that sync better and better. So
yeah, this entity said, like, even this entity list was half of this 2 years ago.
Yeah,
there were less entities that were synced regularly as part of it. So it's good news. That they added refunds fairly recently as a given. Okay, so e-commerce is its own animal. So if you have more detailed questions on what we're going over here in these quick highlights, please reach out to Chris and I and the Martin Associates team. Next, switching gears would be to take a quick look at, for those of us in distribution, where the distribution is associated with the manufacturing entity, straight up wholesaling or e-commerce, the distribution core in Acumatica, constantly making improvements to it. So let's pop into inventory and some of the new reports in here. Let's see, maybe I don't have that exposed yet. Managing turnover history, that's a good one. And inventory turnover. Okay. So with Acumatica 2022 R2, rather than having to rely on external analyses, we have some great partners in NetStock and EasyStock for inventory management enhancements to Acumatica. More and more of those features are being added by the Acumatica product team, including inventory turnover. So had I highlighted managing turnover in DeadStock? Yeah, let's go here. So these are examples of new out-of-the-box reports that Acumatica has built, including DeadStock. So this is basically going to take a look at stock items that have been sitting idle with really no sales or turnover for 30 days or 180 days, for example. So a few pre-built reports. Now you could, of course, run inquiries. Martin Associates, we might very well have built a generic inquiry that helps do the equivalent of it, but it sure is nice to have a pre-built report with all the rules kind of thought out by the product developers. So DeadStock is one, and inventory turnover, which it comes with a management utility as well that we could kind of dive into with more detail. Let's go grab some financial periods. Now let's dig back into 2022 in our sample data here. And pick up a little further back in time. All right, so Acumatica's report is basically, this would be the equivalent of probably 1 or 2 days worth of work in generic inquiry to build the equivalent of like a beginning inventory and an ending inventory, keeping track of average costs, a cost of goods sold, and building the mathematics behind the turnover ratio. So again, nice to see Acumatica bring some really common but relatively advanced inventory management features right into the product suite out of the box. Any questions or commentary, Chris, before I move on to the next topic?
Yeah, this is a good new screen for sure.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So switching away from kind of inventory core management briefly to a manufacturing scenario. Let's pull up under production orders here. No, I'm sorry, they put it under bill of materials. Well, let's find it this way. Okay, there we go. Let's get that highlighted here. So a new tool for managing bills of materials. Let's go pick something that we are building. Where's the Keurig coffee maker example in here? Go. In a given warehouse. And let's see, I guess I need to pick on a bomb for it. Just a moment here. Now, contains, hello. There we go. That's fine. All right. So for managing bill of material revisions for a manufacturer, there's already a number of excellent tools built out here. I didn't have bill of materials exposed, that's why. So our engineering workbench is one that has been added to augment the likes of, say, the visual bill of material. We'll pull up the equivalent here. That was BOM number 5, I believe. So let's simplify our bill of materials. We're trying to build a coffee maker as a manufacturer. And this is highly simplified, that there's an assembly function and then an inspection. And during assembly, we've got component parts that we are assembling, and some of those component parts are sub-assemblies themselves with their own bills of material. And this is one way to kind of understand a multi-level BOM. And then the bill of material itself, we'll go look at that BOM number 5 and pull it up on screen here. There we go. There's our bill of material with those two operations. And to understand that there are sub-assemblies associated with each of these, that's why we have things like the visual BOM. And if I needed to make a revision to this, certainly I could copy that bill of material. If I am employing engineering change control, I can send this through an approval process, and someone can make modifications to operations and or materials consumed at a given operation. And those are okay for helping manage things. The addition of the engineering workbench gives us literally a visual drag and drop. If operations need to happen in a different order, when we if we take a bill of material that's maybe in its draft state, we can actually physically move the order of an operation or even a material item to a different step. And that's really the value of the engineering workbench. For those who have engineering change revisions, the engineering workbench might be a way to kind of get ready for a revision, but then send it through a formal approval. It's basically adding a little bit more drag and drop functionality to augment bill of material copying and engineering change control, is to basically send that bill of material to the engineering workbench and have a little bit more visual interaction with it. All right. So that's a quick highlight regarding manufacturing features. The last kind of big highlight that I had in Acumatica, let's get back to something a little more core. And everybody does. Yeah, that's fine. Exit that. Reload. Get back to bills and adjustments. Now, what am I missing here? There we go. It's just a delay. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's get into how we doing here as far as type, documents, and status. Just want to get a feel for our database here. So let's pick up the document type, cross-tabbed against the status of those documents, and account by reference number, sorry. Okay. All right, so take a looking at our open bills here. Let's pop into an open bill. The the data fields that are available in the summary, as well as in the details, when we're interrogating or wanting to understand a particular component, like what is the project task. In previous versions of Acumatica, we basically need to arrive at the form or locate the form, and then maybe hit the question mark up here, and probably pop into the bills and adjustments form, and then ask, I want to find the project task field. What is it used for? And that's can be kind of like a long process. What Acumatica added with 2022 R2 is the ability to turn on or off, basically like a hover version of the help. So you probably see me invoke it accidentally a couple times here, but if I just leave the mouse for a few seconds on a given field, I get a short description, and then I'm invited to do a little breakout. Now, project task doesn't have a whole bunch of data associated with it, but let's take a look at like the posting period. Hover over it, and if you don't like this feature, this can be turned off too. But it gives you a little bit of access to what a given field is meant to convey. So I thought that this feature, I end up using this feature all the time, and customers who have moved to 2022 R2 are finding it very helpful. Right. Kind of closing in here as far as release notes, as far as the features that I wanted to kind of quickly highlight in 2022 R2. I guess I would invite, are there any questions or requests to review any other highlights in 2022 R2? And if there aren't, we'll move along.
Yeah, so far we are good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, let's move on to the next piece of today's presentation, and that is a preview of Acumatica 2023 R1, which, as Chris mentioned, should be scheduled to come out in April. a quick highlight. If you were interested in exploring some of these features, that's actually not where I'm going to be able to get to it. Just a moment. Let's do it this way. Sorry, I'll bring that back. If you're interested in exploring the bleeding edge of Acumatica, if you go to build.acumatica.com, you can actually come down to the preview tab or preview node and actually see what Acumatica has in the works. So the release notes for this is essentially the beta version 2023-093. So it's a pre-production version, but one of the reasons we're able to highlight some of the things is, one, we can actually begin to show this beta version of the product, and Acumatica has already published the beta version of the release notes, which gives some great highlights. So that's a little technical dive, but let's get into the product and talk about some of its features. I'll maximize that for now. In 2023 R1, Acumatica continues to invest in e-commerce. So there's a number of new mapping and refund kind of processing extensions. They actually added, let's go see if we can pull that up, these notes. Here we go. Right. Yep. So I thought this was rather significant. A lot of customers ask the likes of Martin Associates and BigCommerce and Acumatica to take meta fields, basically user-defined fields or UDFs that are upstream in BigCommerce, to come on down into Acumatica when that order is processed. And that was typically a very custom activity to teach the e-commerce integration platform connector to actually pull those fields, and then we'd have to create a destination for them in Acumatica. Well, Acumatica made that a whole lot easier to take data that you have made sort of custom fields upstream in your e-commerce portal for yourself and or your end customers. The support of BigCommerce meta fields coming down into the orders as imported got a heck of a lot easier. So again, kind of continuous improvement of all areas of the software, lots of investment in e-commerce. They also cleaned up, let's see, now they put it down in the inventory. Another highlight coming in 2023 R2, where'd they put it? There we go. It's funny that they put this under inventory and order management. I think it really actually belonged to be indexed under e-commerce. If your BigCommerce or Shopify e-store is already conducting Avalara or Velixo tax calculations, there's no reason for your Acumatica database to repeat that process. In the past, consultants like Martin Associates, we've had to conduct a number of workarounds in Acumatica to get it to stop attempting to recalculate taxes that have already been really published and made visible to the end purchaser in the e-commerce platform. Acumatica finally is putting in a toggle to turn that off and quiet Acumatica's attempt to recalculate taxes that have already been calculated previously. So that'll be a very much appreciated e-commerce improvement. Next up, in 2023 R1 highlights that are coming in April is Acumatica is simplifying some really core documents in accounts payable and accounts receivable. It can be confusing to be conducting ACH activities in Acumatica as a payment method, but the document type you must use in accounts payable is called a check. Well, they're simplifying that, and that document type will now be called a payment. Similarly, a check that might actually be an ACH record that needs to be voided, or a wire transfer that needs to be voided. Those were called voided checks, and now they'll be called voided payments. So really no functional change, but much more intuitive labeling of document types in both AP and AR coming up. Admittedly, it'll be a shift for current users who've gotten used to avoided check and all the things it might be. Acumatica is also going to be changing what they call the quick check and labeling it something that's a little bit more intuitive. It's a cash purchase that you're making with a supplier. So there's some nice usability changes coming with 2023 R1 in kind of like the AR and AP core. Next up would be some of our improvements to user roles. If you're a customer who's worked with the Martin Associates team, you know that Acumatica comes out of the box with a number of predefined user roles, starting all the way up at admin, all the way down to viewing level roles. But and those user roles did a great job of covering accounts payable and accounts receivable functions. There's actually some new ones added recently for manufacturers, but they kind of left out the distribution core, in that if you wanted to control who can access sales orders, purchase orders, and all the inventory control screens like adjustments and inventory issues and whatnot, and you had to kind of rely on creating user roles from scratch. Well, Acumatica is added to that library of predefined user roles. So we have a sales order admin role, a sales order manager, a sales order clerk, someone who's capable of only just viewing sales orders but not interacting with them directly. And then we repeat that process for purchase orders in like a hierarchy of admin, manager, someone who's a buyer, someone who's a clerk, and we got definitions for each of those, and who just needs to see purchase orders but not touch them. And then similar to for the inventory core of like adjustments and what are your item classes? What are your posting classes? That would be someone in an IN admin role. So really nice. This has the potential to displace many, many hours of professional services work that partners like Martin Associates are often have to do on behalf of customers. Now the publisher is kind of owning and making sure that these areas have a predefined user role that we can basically just place on a user account. I really like this, both a customer data manager, someone who maybe doesn't put in accounts receivable, invoices, or process payments, but manages the customer database. And that's all they do. They're not put in transactions. Very clever that they kind of came up with some of these data manager roles as well as part of that addition. All right. Those were really some of the main highlights that I thought seemed appropriate for this audience. If you are interested in the investment that it takes to get upgraded to Acumatica, I want to remind everyone on this call that with the current Acumatica SaaS license, software as a service, so that's basically hosted in Amazon Web Services or Azure, you get 2 free sandboxes every year. Every time Acumatica an R1 in April or an R2 release in October comes out, you are eligible for a free 90-day sandbox. So that means that really for no cost, take a photocopy of your current database and give you a new URL that you can log into for that upgraded database, and you have 90 days to test it. Typically in conjunction with Martin Associates, we'll help you with that. We'll get, if you do have customizations, extensions from independent software vendors or third-party ISVs, we'll help get upgraded packages in there. And we can test what this new software will look like and feel like for your users. You got 90 days to do it, and that test sandbox database is free. Best practice is ideally you're upgrading once a year not only to stay current with your Acumatica license, but to take advantage of all the features that Acumatica keeps releasing on a consistent basis. If you have questions about the upgrade process, about testing, about sandboxes, or specific questions about some of the features that we've highlighted today, or how to even check them out further. Maybe the manufacturing content we covered today was way too light, and you want to dive into things that I skipped over completely, like an enhancement of the MRP history report. Just let Chris and I and anyone else at Martin Associates know, and we'll be happy to assist. Chris, that's really all I had as far as Acumatica 2023 R1 highlights for this audience. Any additions or Q&A items?
Check here. So you talked about how you upgrade, and can I get a test? That's absolutely. So no other crazy questions coming in, which is good. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. If you do want to see any more features in detail, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to, demo anything and see how it could work for your system. But hopefully you got a good idea of the effort Acumatica is continuing to put in and enhance their system, and make it a little bit easier to support, to manage, and add features that help people, get their work done. And look forward to a little more about 2023 R1 when that officially comes out. And again, this recording will be emailed to you. So thank you for joining us today. Go ahead and end like 10 minutes early, which will be great. Thank you, Tom, for the great overview. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
And everyone, have a great day.